Hello everyone, welcome to our April Global Monthly Video Collaboration Group. On the first Wednesday of every month, a group of demonstrators from around the world, we all get together and we have a theme for our card or our project, and we all use the same theme. Sometimes we'll all use the same stamp set, but most of the time it's a theme. And April's theme is feminine. And I was going to make my Mother's Day cards, but my parents are back in the UK and they had Mother's Day already. It was in March. Now here in Canada, it's going to be in May. But I wanted to make a feminine card that you could use for Mother's Day if you haven't yet had Mother's Day, or you could use as a birthday card or a card just to say, hello, I love you, I'm thinking about you at the moment. And so what I decided to use was the Forever Blossoms set. And I'm going to use the main stamp, and I'm going to use the die that cuts that stamp out, and one little sentiment that says love. And I'm also going to use a little bit of the designer series paper that goes with this set, the Parisian Blooms paper. And I'm going to show you how to do some partial cutting. Most of you will have stamped and used a die and cut the whole thing out, but not everybody might have seen partial cutting or how to do partial cutting. So that's what I'm doing for my video. Now, don't forget that because this is a global video, at the end of the little blurb on YouTube, you'll have lots of names, and they're the rest of the demonstrators who are taking part. And click on their links and watch their videos too, because there's always some brilliant ideas. Now, to do the partial cutting, I'm taking just an ordinary piece of thick whisper white, which is cut to, it's just half a sheet, and then scored down the middle. And what we're going to end up with is something that looks like this, where you've cut part of the flower out, but not all of it. And so I've got my stamp ready, and I'm going to stamp in soft suede. Because I actually like the colour of the flowers once they have that little brown outline. Now let me just line this up so I know it's straight, and ink up my stamp. Make sure I've got ink all on it. Yeah. And then here's the score line. You probably can't see where that is just because of the way I've got the camera. But my score line's there, and I'm going to try and put the stamp just in the middle of my card. I'm not worried about it being really straight or exactly in the middle or anything. I just want to make sure it's roughly in the middle of my card. Okay, and while I've got this ink out, I'm actually going to stamp my little sentiment too. I've just got a little scrap. It's actually the piece that came off here. So I've just got a little scrap, and my stamp, I chose the little love one, and I'm going to just stamp it on here. I do love that font, it's really pretty. Okay, and then I'm going to use my 1 1/4 inch punch. If you don't have a punch that's 1 1/4, it really doesn't matter. Just cut out, if you've got a die that cuts out, you can use that, like a little stitched circle or an oval. Whatever you've got is going to work for this card. I'll pop that to one side. Okay, so let's do the die cutting. Now, I've got my big shot ready. I'm just going to check that that's all in frame as well. Let me put it up a little bit so that you can see. There we go. And I've just got my magnetic platform and my one clear plate at the bottom. Let's move it over a little bit. There we go. And then I'm going to just put my card on here and try and make it so that it's straight. And then I've got the die, and I only want this part of the die to cut out, but you put the whole die on to start with. Just going to line it up, and sometimes when I put things through, I can slightly move the die or something, and I don't want that to happen today. So I'm just using a little bit of washi tape just to hold it on. And that way I know it's going to be, you know, going through the die cutter, it won't move, and I won't accidentally push it or anything. And then I only want this right hand side of it to actually cut. So I'm going to put my second plate on, and I'm going to line up the edge of the plate sort of halfway along the flower, and it will only cut out the piece that's under this second plate. So have a look and see which bits you want it to cut. Just hold that on top, and then, oops, there we go. It's just going to go through as normal, she said. I moved the little plate. There we go, let's put it a bit further along and make sure that's straight. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to run it through, and you'll hear that bump when the plate finishes. So I'm taking the plate off. Let's get this out. Now, I didn't want too much of my flower to cut. I only wanted to have a little bit of it. So when you take this off, yours might go through a little bit further than mine, or not as far. It really doesn't matter. There's no sort of exact measurement with it. Just take this washi tape off slowly so I don't tear the paper. Okay, now you can see that some of it has cut out, and the rest where the second plate was, it didn't cut out. Now, if you have a steady hand and you're brilliant at cutting, you could just use your scissors and cut up and from the top down. But I don't. I have a wonky hand and it doesn't always cut in a straight line. So I'm going to use my trimmer. And I can see that the end of the cut is here on the top of that petal. So I'm going to try and line that top petal up just with the track here. And I'm going to get my score blade right at the top, and now I need my cutting blade, and I just want to make sure that I'm only going down as far as that petal. It doesn't matter if you don't go quite as far, because it's easy to trim just a little bit with your scissors. Okay, so I'm going to put that up. You see, I can already see that it's not really lined all the way with that cut, but I can cut it, no problem with my scissors. And then I'm going to do the same at the bottom. The line goes just about a third of the way across that leaf. So I'm just going to put my trimmer up to where I think that is. Now there is some in the middle here as well, but I'm not going to try and line that up with my cutter. I will do that with scissors. I don't want to have too many little cuts and nicks in it. Okay, so I've got my paper snips, and here you can see there's just a little tiny corner in there. So I'm just going to, there we go. And I'll do the one at the top as well. And it's easy just to move your scissors and line up with where it was already cut. And then this little piece in the middle here, to make it easier, oops, I'm just going to trim this bit off. And the same here, and that way I don't have to be sort of moving the bulk of the card around. I can just put my scissors in there, and I can make my own little pattern to go around the flower. There. Okay, so let's pop those on one side. I'm just going to fold on my score line, and you can see already that I've just got part of the flower. Now I'm going to colour it in, and really, because I've used a water-based ink, I should be colouring in with my blends, but I know that if I use my blends, they'll bleed through on the back, and I don't want that. So I'm going to use watercolour crayons, and usually when you use the watercolour crayons, you would stamp with stays on, because that doesn't bleed at all. But if I don't put much colour on, I can still use my blender pen and colour in, but let me show you on this one. What might happen is, see, it reactivates the ordinary ink, so you would get whatever colour you'd stamped in, you can get that colour to move. Now, I'm not going to do much in the way of colouring, so it won't move too much of the ink. But I do want it to be where the stems are, I want that brown, so I'm going to do those bits first, and I don't mind that they're sort of bleeding. And the blender pen is really good for this because it has that nice fine tip and it just moves the ink wherever you want it. Sometimes I find if I use the aqua painter, I will get too much water, so I don't tend to do this kind of colouring with an aqua painter, just because I don't want too much of that brown and I don't want the page to be wet. Okay, let's just clean that off. And then I'm only using the basic set of the watercolour pencils, and I'm going to use the Calypso Coral because I don't have the Petal Pink, which is going to match my paper. So I'm going to use Calypso Coral and the Old Olive. So let's just find those. That's the Calypso Coral. I think that's the Old Olive. Yeah. Okay. And for colouring, I'm just going to put a little bit of colour sort of in the middle of each petal. Really quickly, nothing, you know, too advanced, nothing hard. Just a little bit of colour. You can always add a little bit more colour afterwards, and I'll show you a quick way to do that as well. But I'm just trying to get a little bit of colour on each of them. And I don't want it to be too orangey from the Calypso Coral because my paper isn't orange. And then I'm going to do just the same with the Old Olive. Let's see where's next. Don't worry if you haven't got enough, we can add. Okay, and then I'm just going to quickly colour so that I don't move too much of that brown ink. And I quite like the effect of having some of the petals with white on anyway. So even if I was colouring with my blends, I would do the same. Now, if you find that you're starting to move that brown ink, just clean your blender pen and it will get rid of any brown that you have on your blender pen anyway. And you can see that some of that brown is moving, and I quite like it for the centres. So I'm going over the centres just a little bit as I'm colouring. And that almost gives you a different colour for the middle of your flower. I'm just going over that brown. Just clean that while I do this little one here. Okay. Now, if you find you want a little bit more, you can always use your blender pen. You can colour back over it, or you can use your blender pen and just get a bit more saturated colour. See how that's just a little bit darker? Just because you're not spreading it out quite so far. So what I'm doing is just putting in the centre and the bottom of the petals, I'm just putting a little bit more colour. And it's not moving that brown ink too much. And I'm sort of getting, you know, a little bit more depth, a little bit more colour. So I know it's a little bit unorthodox using watercolour crayons on the watercolour paint, but you can make it work. Okay, so let's just clean that. I don't want any red, as I'm going to just pop the colour over the leaves for now. Okay. And again, I'm just quickly going over so that I've got a little bit of green. want a little bit more green, so I'm doing the same again. I'm just taking a little bit more from my crayon. You could also do this with your ink pads. You could put your blender pen into your ink pad and colour, and if you wanted a little bit darker colour. Put a little bit on these. There. And that's all I'm going to do. So I'm going to clean that blender pen. These last forever, these blender pens. I think I've had this one maybe 18 months and I've used it quite a lot, but there's still the alcohol in it that makes it be a blender pen, and I don't ever have any bother with them. Okay, now I'm just going to get my bone folder and just go down the edge of this card. There we go. I don't know where I got that little bit of dirt from. Let's find my little eraser, see if it'll come off with that. There we are. There we go. Okay, so that's our colouring finished. So we've got the partial die cut and our colouring. And next I'm going to use a little bit of the Parisian Blossoms DSP, and I'm using this page that this sheet that has the writing, the little script, because I really like how that looks. And see, now you can't really tell that this was the Calypso Coral pencil. It sort of blends in with this petal pink. Okay, now I know this is too big, but I'm just going to attach it and then snip it off at the bottom. Let's see where I need it to go down to. So about there. Okay. And I'm just attaching it with my liquid glue. You could use snail or you could use tear tape, whatever works. Right, now let me just use my grid paper to line this up. And then I want it to go just underneath the fold here. Okay, so I'm going to put it, oops, I'm going to put it about here. Let's line it up again. Make sure it's right at the top. Okay, and then I'm just going to use my longer scissors just to trim that off. And it's only because I was too lazy just to put it through the trimmer and cut it off first. Okay. Okay, so next, let's find that little piece that I already stamped and some dimensionals. I'm just going to pop a couple of dimensionals on the back there. Oops. I can never get rid of these little backings for the dimensionals. They stick everywhere. And this I'm just going to put over here. If you wanted to cut a backing for it as well, using a larger punch, that would be really pretty. And then the only other thing I'm going to put on are some of the champagne rhinestones. But you could add a little ribbon, some twine, whatever you've got. Okay, let me find where my poker pin's gone. Oh, don't know, can't see it. Okay. Oh well, I'll use my scissors. Okay, so I'm just going to pop 3 on, I think. I want to put 1 just over here on my sentiment. And then my others, I think oh, the little glue stick, little glues there is just sticking off. Okay, but my others, I'm going to put near the flower. see. I'm just going to pop it up there. And there we are. That's my feminine card for our global hop this month. Please remember just to have a look at everybody else's as well. Those extra names are at the bottom. See what the other ladies have created and give them a go. I hope you'll give partial die cutting a go, because once you've done it a couple of times, I promise you it's easy and it just gives such a nice effect. It's just a little bit different and it saves you fussy cutting all the way around something. Thanks ever so much for watching me, everybody, this month, and I'll see you all again on my ordinary YouTube channel, or if you're just joining from the video collaboration group, I'll see you all in May. Take care. Bye, everyone.